Hello and welcome to the latest Walsall Safeguarding Partnership podcast. Today we are going to be discussing child exploitation. As part of the podcast we'll be hearing from Katie Storia-Young, who's the Exploitation and Missing Team Manager, Jade Brown, Exploitation and Missing Coordinator, and Jodie Berry, Assistant Team Manager for Turning Point Adolescent Support Hub. Together we'll be talking about what is child exploitation. What do the Child and Exploitation and Missing team do? What interventions do we have in Walsall to support children and young people? And what to do when someone is concerned about a child or young person being exploited? You will hear references as part of the podcast made about different partner agencies and support services across Walsall. You'll find information about these services on the training page of the Walsall Safeguarding Partnership website, which can be found at www.walsallsp.co.uk.
My name is Katie Story-Young. I'm the Exploitation and Missing Team Manager.
Jade Brown, Exploitation and Missing Coordinator.
Jodie Berry, Assistant Manager for Turning Point Adolescent Support Hub.
Okay, Katie, can you just tell us a little bit about what is child exploitation?
Exploitation, more generally, we talk about adults and children being exploited, but exploitation is usually when a child is coerced, manipulated or controlled to do something that they wouldn't necessarily want to do. And that could be committing crime, for example, and or kind of sexual activity. So we talk about criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation, but there's lots of ways that we can kind of coerce and control children and adults to do things that we wouldn't necessarily want them to do. So in Walsall we see a lot of children who are kind of groomed, more recently actually, for things like bank fraud, for example, where children have been asked to open bank accounts and kind of remove money from it. And we've seen children groomed for a thing which you may have heard about in the media called county lines, where we have kind of children who are groomed for drug dealing who are moved across the country from Walsall. So it can mean a lot of things really, but generally they kind of the victim of exploitation can receive something in return for the exploitation. And that could be anything. It could be money, it could be food, it could be a place to stay.
And it can be as simple as things of affection as well. So, you know, when we've got quite vulnerable young people, sometimes they just want a sense of belonging or that sort of relationship with somebody, and sometimes that's all that young people get in return. And I think what we need to be aware of with child exploitation is obviously the level of trust that's built up by perpetrators. They will target young people, they will see their vulnerabilities and they'll home in and they'll work on that. And quite often within exploitation, young people won't always know who the perpetrator is, they won't know they're being exploited. And sometimes journey into exploitation can be quite a positive one for them because they are given things, they are treated in a way they've always wanted to be treated. So part of the journey at the start can be quite positive, which is why it's so hard to, at times, disrupt.
Yeah, and break that cycle for those young people.
Yeah.
If they think that they're in a positive relationship with their groomer or their perpetrator, it could be really hard to kind of, as professionals, to engage that young person and say, actually, this is wrong. This is somebody who's abusing you. And what we're seeing a lot of in Walsall is this is adults who are grooming children as well. So it's very similar to what we're seeing nationwide here in Walsall.
And I think there is an element as well, isn't there, of peer recruitment as well, in the sense of obviously sometimes young people that are involved themselves, sometimes they will be told, well, if you can bring some of the young people in, this will be better for you, or sometimes because they don't understand the level of things they're into, or they see it as a positive thing because of what they're receiving, that then it's, they say to their friends, well, actually, I got 50 quid last week. And quite frankly, if you're a young person where you haven't got food on your table, or your shoes are falling to bits and you've got holes in, for example, that 50 quid is going to be very appealing. Yet obviously we know it comes with a lot of harm and a lot of risk, but unfortunately young people don't see that element straight away.
So in Walsall we've got an Exploitation and Missing team. Jade, you're the coordinator of that team. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so the missing element of the team, we support any young person that's been reported missing within the Walsall area. So when a young person is reported missing, we get a notification received from the police, and then our missing officers will go out and do a return interview with that young person. What a return interview is aimed to do is to give that young person the opportunity to speak to somebody independent of their care. So whether they're placed at home or whether they're placed within the local authority care, that young person has the opportunity to be able to speak about anything that's going on in their life at that current time, speak about why they've been reported missing and what happened whilst they was missing. To do that, we're then able to unpick exactly what the life of that young person looks like, and then report any of those concerns back to practitioners or their case holders, and then those case holders will be able to support that young person more effectively. Also, any concerns with regards to extrafamilial abuse, so abuse outside the home when we're speaking about exploitation, we'd feed that back in with the police and help the police build up a picture of any exploitation concerns. So, and with regards to the exploitation element of the team, we support and work really closely with multi-agency, multiple agencies within the Walsall area to be able to disrupt and support young people who are currently experiencing any exploitation or trafficking.
It's quite a difficult job to describe, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
The main aim of kind of the team is to ensure that all of the practitioners around us, and that includes family as well of young people who have been exploited, have a shared knowledge of potentially who the adults are who are exploiting these children, and also to keep those children safe.
Yeah.
That's the kind of main purpose of our team.
Yeah.
So once we've identified these children or young people, what interventions do we have in Walsall to support them?
We're quite lucky in Walsall. We've got a number of different services, both statutory and voluntary sector agencies, who support not just victims of exploitation, but also kind of wider family units like we've just spoken about. We are really lucky to have street teams who, if you've heard of exploitation in Walsall previously, you will very definitely have heard of street teams. They're an amazing voluntary sector organisation. They've been around for some kind of 20 odd years, and they generally kind of work with children who are quite high risk in terms of exploitation. So working in the sharp end of disruption and working with families as well. And recently they've just had a new grant actually to do some community resilience work. So if you haven't heard of street teams previously, you will very definitely hear of them in the future. We also have a number of statutory services that are working in exploitation, particularly our youth justice service, for example. Sadly, when children are criminally exploited, often they can be given kind of orders and things that are put into place even though they're victims, and I know that's something that the youth justice service are really keen to work with wider partners around. But we have a lot of children who have kind of statutory orders to work with us, and there are a lot of other organisations within the council as well, a lot of other teams who are offering support to children who are being exploited, like your service, Jodie.
So we're Turning Point. We're the service for families at risk of breakdown. So that at the point where it might be that children will come into pre-proceedings or come into the care system, and within the service we have a number of we're a multidisciplinary service. So we have speech and language therapists, we have psychologists, we have a substance misuse specialist, and we actually have 2 violence exploitation specialists on the team. And the reason for that is when the service was envisioned, we acknowledged, and obviously practitioners like myself know, that there's a massive link between family breakdown and exploitation, and that actually the impact of exploitation on families can be quite detrimental and lead to those young people coming into the care system. So it's those workers are in place to work directly with the children, families, siblings, everybody around those young people that are being exploited, because they understand the complexities there and the level of intervention needed, because we work quite intensively with families for a period of up to 20 weeks. And within that as well, I think also we should mention the inclusion and wellbeing team, who also have been working out of the same place as ourselves, which they are working with schools and also individuals who may not be in full-time education, because again we know the correlation with young people that are not in education, employment and training, and obviously exploitation. So they are also doing a big piece of work with both two new teams, so that's extra things that we can offer within.
And it's kind of levels, like we just said. We have children who we know are being exploited, and then we have children and adults who are at risk of exploitation, and it's different kinds of interventions for different kinds of people, and I think that's really important.
And just to mention on that note, we work really closely with the police. The police are a vital part of the intervention and support that we offer to the young people and their families, because as we know, young people who are being exploited by those perpetrators or offenders, and police are a massive part of that intervention, because we can't stop this exploitation without targeting and disrupting the perpetrators and the offenders.
Yeah, absolutely. Mention as well about kind of transitions. What we've noticed is a lot of young people, who are exploited, coming up to the age of kind of 16, 17, 18, also need support and into kind of early adulthood, really. And we're doing a big piece of work in the team now to how best we can support young adults and adults who are victims of exploitation. So we're working really closely with the adult social care team, and again, street teams have transitions workers who we commission to kind of do work with children who are moving into adulthood. So there is still intervention for those children who move beyond their 18th birthday. And if anyone has kind of any questions about that, it's probably best that you come back to the team and ask us directly.
So if anyone is concerned about a child or young person being exploited, what should they do?
First of all, I suppose if you're a worker or you're somebody who's thinking this young person or this adult that I'm working with is being exploited, probably the best thing to do is to talk to somebody else about it. Your manager in the first instance, and say, look, I'm really concerned about this person, what should we do next? And I think that's really important, because all of us as practitioners, and kind of Jodie and myself and Jade, we've worked in kind of exploitation for some time, but we can't kind of tackle it on our own. We have to do it in a partnership sense, either in terms of with our colleagues or with other agencies. So I think that's really crucial. If you're concerned about somebody, or you've got concerns about a location, for example, speak to somebody else about it. If you're concerned about a child, obviously there's the usual route. If someone is at extreme risk right now, you call 999, or if there's something you just want to report to the police, perhaps you've seen something, perhaps you're walking your dog in the park, that's happened to me in the past, and you think, oh, that's something I'm worried about, you can call 101 and just kind of share those concerns with police directly. And if you're really concerned about a child, you could have a look at kind of making a referral into the multi-agency safeguarding hub here at Walsall. So you can go onto the Walsall Safeguarding Partnership website and kind of have a look at the processes for that. But in terms of if you're really concerned about exploitation within your community, it's really good just to make a note of it as well, so that you can say, on this day or at this time, that's what I saw. That kind of intelligence and information is really useful to us.
And I echo what Katie says, is if you've probably seen these posters around, if you see something, say something. At the end of the day, when we don't say something, that gives more power to perpetrators and the criminals that are involved in exploitation. The only way we're ever going to tackle it is to speak about it, to be open about it and share information, and that does take the power away from perpetrators and these criminal people. So
It's important to
please
get
always
it
share information. And like Kate said, document things down. It might be mad, you might only get half a reg plate or a colour of a car or even a certain area, but sometimes those are the last piece of a jigsaw that the police or the professionals need in which to be able to act on something. You sometimes don't realise that all those little bits make a massive picture. then that's
If
important.
yeah, I mean, if you know that your child, for example, if you're worried about your child or your neighbour's child, for example, and you know that actually 11 o'clock of an evening, you know, a white BMW pulls up, you know, things like registration numbers are really important for us to be able to share with the police and like Jodie said, really kind of crack down on the perpetrators. And it's important that we remember that these are children and adults are victims of exploitation. And we need to do more as a community to become resilient against perpetrators of this type of crime.
And just to add, if you're concerned that sharing any information may put you at risk, you can share this information anonymously. You can do this through the Fearless website or through Crime Stoppers or even through the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub.
Thank you very much, ladies, for your input in this. It's been really beneficial.
Thank you.
Thanks.